All right, so I'm joined today by former Idaho State wide receiver Tanner Connor. Tanner, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great. I was saying I appreciate you taking the time. I know you got a lot going on for you right now, so it's like a week out from the draft. So I appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Of course, of course. All right, so let's kind of start from the beginning, I guess. Growing up, you played a few different sports: basketball, track, of course, football. It seemed like you were focusing a lot on track. I mean, even into college, you still ran track. Obviously, now you're on the verge of the NFL. So when did the NFL kind of become a dream for you? I guess was that something from a kid? As a kid, you were dreaming of the NFL, or did that kind of just become a thing later in life?
Yeah, I mean, the NFL is always like a dream for me, but it just always wasn't quite a reality until I got to college. Like coming out of high school, I didn't have any offers for football at all, but I had a lot of track offers. And so I went to a bunch of different schools asking to play football, and Idaho State was the only one that let me. And even when I got there, like I was still a very raw athlete. I got to Idaho State like 180 pounds. I left at 230, so I put on quite a bit of weight there. And I really didn't start to develop into like a true receiver until like my junior year. And that was like my breakout season. And that's how, when I kind of realized that I'll be able to play at the next level. And so between my junior and senior seasons is really when it started to become reality for me. But it was always a dream I had as a kid.
Right. And your dad played professional football in the NFL, right? So did that kind of impact your dream growing up, kind of seeing what he did and being like, I want to do what he did.
Yeah, no, it did for sure. Because growing up, like that your dad was a stud at University of Oregon. They played for the Seahawks and the Rams a little bit, so you want to do what he did and hopefully surpass him as well. So, me and my two younger brothers all have aspirations to play professional sports because of him. And so having him as a role model was great. It was tough at times because a lot of people would ask me why I wasn't as good or as big as my dad, like high school and then like early college. But eventually, I finally developed into the kind of athlete he was. And so now I'm hoping to surpass, his career in the NFL and go beyond that and be a trailblazer for my family.
Right. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. Like you said, you were kind of a late bloomer in that regard. Now look at you. You're like 6'3", and I don't think anybody's poking fun at your size anymore. That's for sure.
No, for sure not.
When you originally, like you said before, when you originally visited Idaho State, I believe that was just initially a visit for track. So how did that conversation go about, ending up, because I know you ran track and played football at Idaho State. So how did you end up playing football there as well?
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, I had offers to like University of Washington, Washington State, and then other Big Sky schools just for track because I didn't have any football offers at high school, and so I didn't know if I was going to play football at all, but I knew I wanted to, and so I went to every single school. This was like late June, July timeline, so pretty late in the recruiting process. And I kept asking, "Can I play football? Like, will you let me play football? Like, will you give me a connection with the coaches?" And they kept telling me no. I was like denied like 6 times. I got to Idaho State, which was my last visit, and Hillary Merkley is the head track coach there. She still is, and she was a dual sport athlete in college and kind of understood my passion and my dream. So on my visit there, she took me to the coach's office. I asked them to look at my film and tell me what they thought. I went back out to lunch with Hillary, and then 2 hours later, they called her, told us to come back, and then they offered me a scholarship pretty much late July, and then I became a scholarship football athlete, a walk-on track athlete, and did both sports for all 4 years.
It's funny how that works. You originally are a walk on, or you're originally there as a visit for track, and you end up being a quote unquote walk on as a
Yeah,
as a track athlete. That's funny.
yeah.
I mean, so you touched on a little bit having to try and balance that lifestyle of playing football and running track. I mean, you did that for 5 years at Idaho State. How did you go about that? How did you balance doing both and having any kind of a life?
Yeah, it was hard, especially because college is more demanding in sports. But I know growing up, being a three-sport athlete in high school, I was kind of used to just being in sports all year round. And so, obviously, our football program wasn't the greatest. So our season was usually done by Thanksgiving. And so I would do football in the fall, take my Thanksgiving break off, which is about a week, and then I would start indoor track training after that. Then indoor transition to outdoor track, I would do those, and then I would do outdoor track and spring football at the same time, which is probably the most lucrative thing I did because sometimes you're practicing both in the same day. And office time you're like switching practices between them. And then after that, spring football would end and track would usually go through May. And if you make regionals, it would go through June or nationals July. But So my track career would go basically till the end of May, and then I would go back into summer training after that for football. So it was a hard grind. At first, it wasn't really bothering me, but definitely towards the end of my career, I started to feel like the total amount of volume that I was putting in on both sports started to hit me, and started to feel the effects of both track and football. But I don't regret it. I mean, I had a great track career and I had a great football career as well.
For sure. And now, I mean, obviously going to the NFL, at least you will have at least somewhat of an off season. Obviously, it's still a year-round process, but at least you're not, like you said, you're not running track meets in the spring this time. So that's at least a break, if you will.
Yeah, for sure.
You had the opportunity to work out at Washington's Pro Day. Of course, like you said before, you got an offer to run track at Washington. And of course, it's also pretty close to where you grew up. I believe it's within like 45 minutes of where you grew up. What was that experience like for you to not only compete with so many talented players, but to do so, where kind of, close to where you grew up?
It was awesome. My agent did a really good job of convincing them to let me in. UW didn't have any receivers coming out, and so they needed a receiver for their quarterback to throw to. And so agent hooked it up there. I was within the radius that they allowed. I was only 40 minutes south of them because I lived in Kent, Washington. And so I went up there and got to, do my pro day in front of way more scouts. I think we had 29 teams in attendance, and I was able to do it in front of potential first, second round picks with their DBs they had. And so being able to show out and metrically on the different tests and stuff in front of some really good NFL talent was big for me, because now it shows that, hey, this kid actually he has the amount of talent these guys have, but they would have never known if they never saw me, in person. So I tested well, and I, ran good routes, and they even had me do some tight end drills after. So it was a blessing for me, and it definitely boosted my draft stock. A lot of scouts were super impressed with me just because they didn't know really who I was. They kind of knew of me, but didn't really know how I moved and stuff like that. So that was a great opportunity for me. And like you said, doing it close to home, it was pretty much like a perfect situation.
Yeah, I mean, just getting more eyeballs on you, as many eyeballs as possible. That's priority number one. You could have the talent, but if you're not being, if you don't have the opportunity to showcase it, then it's who's going to see it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So absolutely. So I like you just mentioned it. You did run some drills at tight end at your pro day. Is that something that teams have kind of talked to you about potentially playing tight end in the NFL, or and also where do you feel most comfortable? Where do you see yourself playing in the NFL?
Yeah, it's been a really interesting process because I've had different teams ask me to do different things for them. I've had some teams who still think of me as a true wide receiver. I have some teams who want me to play more of a hybrid power slot for them, and then like mismatch type deal. And then I have some teams who are like, hey, you're gonna play tight end for us. And so for me, it's just gonna be wherever the role fits on the NFL team. I think that's what's good about my skill set, is I provide a lot of value in different situations. I can do pretty much every special team, and I can play receiver or tight end or a hybrid between. And so it's just gonna end up being whatever a team needs from me role wise. And so I'm pretty excited to see where I end up, because wherever I end up is going to change what position I play and what role I have. And so the conversation at tight end is new for me. I never played a true tight end, but I understand the role and how it works in offense. So it's something I'm willing to learn, and I can definitely block. And if that's what my path is going to take me on, I have no problem doing it. It'll be fun. I don't really think I fit in anywhere perfectly. I think I fit into a lot of places really well.
Yeah, and that's kind of how the NFL has evolved. Obviously, you have all these hybrid players. You look at a guy like Evan Ingram. He's not your typical tight end, but he has that athleticism, that speed that you have as well. And those guys, like you said, they can be matchup nightmares, as they say. They can be versatile players that can really excel in a lot of offenses out there.
Yeah.
Are there any kind of, on that note, I guess, any specific players that you kind of, model your game after, or just really even like to watch?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the tight end talk is new for me. So I haven't watched a bunch of tight end film, but your George Kittle, Travis Kelce, your Evan Ingrams, Darren Waller, people like those, I've watched film on them. But in college, I was trying to find the closest thing to me. So I'd watch the bigger receivers like Julio Jones, DK Metcalf, AJ Brown, Chase Claypool, guys like that, because those type of receivers move a little bit differently. They're taking a little bit longer to get up to full speed. They're not as quick or twitchy. So I like to watch them to see how they run their routes, because they run more powerfully. They like to run through contact. And so that's really what I modeled my game after. I try to be as physical as I could, both without the ball in my hands and with the ball in my hands. And so those guys do a really good job of that, and are able to compete with the best of them. And so just watching people with similar body types and similar skill sets and athleticism to me is how I try to develop my game.
Makes sense. Those are some of the best players in the game that you just mentioned right there.
Yeah.
You were also invited to play in this year's East-West Shrine Bowl over in Vegas. What was that experience like?
It was really cool. It was daunting at first because I was a smaller FCS kid and I was going against all these bigger school guys. But after I got there and we went through one-on-ones and stuff, I felt like I had a lot more confidence because I knew I could play with those guys. Like they were just other players that had similar skill set to me, but just with a different helmet. And so throughout the week, I developed really well. I learned how to, run an actual pro style offense in the NFL because I ran an RPO, no huddle offense in college. And so that was fun to learn. But going against this high level competition, actually succeeding against them, it was super like confidence boosting for me because now I know that I'll be able to play at the next level because these guys are going to play at the next level as well. And so that was a great experience for me. I was super grateful to even go. I didn't know if I would get an invite or not. And so super shout out to Eric Alco for having me out there because a lot of people didn't know about me, but they knew about me after the East West Shrine game.
Yeah, it's like the Washington Pro Day, just more eyes on you as possible. I love like talking to guys who like you who've gone to smaller schools who don't really get that exposure. I was talking to Jason Poe, who's a guard from Mercer, and he was telling he worked out at Georgia's Pro Day. And obviously those guys they got down there, it's a wild experience, but it's great to get that attention on you that you wouldn't have had otherwise.
Yeah, for sure. No, it was grateful. It was a blessing. I was grateful to be able to be there.
Definitely. Are there any teams that have kind of spoken to you a decent amount leading up to the draft? Feel free, you don't have to answer, of course, but any teams that kind of keep popping up on your radar, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, obviously locally, the Seahawks talked to, at the East West Shrine game, I can tell you which teams were really interested in me. It was like teams like Miami, 49ers, Jets, Giants, Seahawks, the Saints, and even the Colts. So it's been a mishmash of different teams. I think a lot of teams are really interested in me, but a lot of teams don't really know how much value they want to put into me as a player. And so it's going to just be dependent upon, how much value they think I can bring and whether or not they want to take me from their teams. I think a lot of teams are looking at me and a lot of teams like the potential they see out of me because I think my greatest value is I have a high ceiling. A lot of guys, come out of college and their ceiling is pretty low. Like they're a really good player, but there's not much left to develop. With me, I feel like I have a lot left to develop and I have a good skill set to go along with it. And so a lot of teams that's attractive to them, especially being a big body receiver that can run. And so there's been a lot of teams not like directly contacting me. Like I've had direct contact, but a lot of teams have just been, keeping tabs on me, making sure where I'm at in the process, asking me for my draft day number and stuff like that. And so I think it'll be interesting to see where I get picked up because I think a lot of people are watching me from far away.
For sure. And you never know how it's going to fall. So much of it is just dependent on how the board falls. And then, some team is there and they're like, oh, you know what? Tanner's our guy right here. You never know how it's going to fall. Of course, we're a Jet side, so I'm glad to hear the Jets are interested.
Yeah, I had a really good interview with them at the Shrine game. They were really interested in me. I was talking to a bunch of their scouts, so it was fun. I like meeting them.
Awesome. Well, we'd love to have you in New York for sure. Finally, I want to end it with a few fun, quick hitter questions, right? Not football related, just kind of, getting to know you, getting to know Tanner as a person, right? So first, what are some of your favorite hobbies outside of football?
Yeah, so even though I grew up like a really big athlete and my family's been revolved around sports, I'm pretty geeky outside of it. And so I like to play video games and like watch anime in my free time. That's kind of how I detach from training and football. And a lot of other athletes actually are big into that as well. And so those are the two main things I like to do in my free time. And I feel like it just helps me get away from all the training because it's completely different, but also gives me time to reset so I can come back to training and still love the game.
Yeah, that's definitely a common thing in today's game where you just kind of have those two different I don't want to say two different personalities, but you have they're an athlete, by day, and then by night they're just gaming and stuff. What's your video game of choice?
So me and my brother played I probably the most played game I have is Rocket League. It's becoming really big, and my brother and I got really good at it. And I've been playing it for like 6 years now, so it's probably my number one as of right now.
I've heard others say that as well. It's a fun game. I've only played it a little bit, but it's definitely one of those games. I feel like once you get going, you kind of it's a very addictive game. You just want to keep getting better.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It sounds stupid conceptually, but like once you start playing, you're like, oh, it's actually really fun. So that's the game I've enjoyed.
For sure. Do you have any kind of hidden talents, something that people might be surprised to know you're good at, I guess, other than maybe Rocket League?
No, I mean, I don't do much outside of sports. Like all my talents tend to be within like the physical body. I tend to be like, I think a lot of people don't understand this unless they actually train with me, but I'm a really big like into Olympic weightlifting. So I love to do like big Olympic weightlifting lifts because I feel like it translates to the field really well, but also it's something I get to work on outside of football. Obviously, like I have huge interest in track, and so I like to watch track outside of my free time. Like there's a bunch of pro meets going on right now. I like to watch those in my free time, but other talents I really don't have much. I consider myself to be really good at video games, but that's something I do in my free time. So other than that, there's nothing I can do really well outside the field or athletically.
I think that qualifies, being really good at video games. That's not something
Yeah,
people would assume maybe by just, watching you play. They're not like, oh, this guy's like, he's a pro Rocket League player. I don't think they'd assume that. So
yeah,
I think that qualifies.
no, for sure.
And finally, what is your go-to karaoke song? So not like your favorite song, right? Not your favorite song all the time, but if I gave you a mic right now and I said, hey, you got to sing, which would be weird. I don't know why I do that, but if I did, what would you sing?
It's weird because I'm not big into music like that. So here's one thing that's really interesting about me is that nobody would ever guess this, but my favorite type of music is EDM. And I think it has to go because my mind is very analytically driven. And so there's a lot of stuff going on in my head. And for whatever reason, like the fast paced, like, music that would exist within EDM tends to calm my mind down a lot. And so I listen to it all the time when I'm like playing video games or working out because it like silences a lot that's going on in my head because I'm constantly thinking. And so there's really not a lot of songs I know lyrics to, which is weird because like I listen to music and I don't like listen to lyrics. I listen to like how the song sounds. So if you told me to sing a karaoke song, I probably can't give you. I could probably do some Linkin Park songs. I'm really big into like heavy
Okay.
metal rock as well, and so any kind of Linkin Park song you give me, I'd build a karaoke it pretty well.
Okay. That works. Yeah. EDM is definitely, it's one of those genres you can't really karaoke that. There's not
Yeah.
much you can do about that.
No, it has a bad connotation to it as well, but I listen to like specific types that just tend to quiet my mind and keep my mind busy while I'm doing other stuff. And so it works really well for me.
Yeah, no, that doesn't surprise me. Especially those genres that are really, musically, or they're more of the sound driven than lyrics driven.
Yeah,
They're very good
exactly.
to just kind of focus your mind and just stay focused on a task. A lot of people that write, like I know a lot of people that write like me, and they listen to. I know people that listen to like heavy metal music, just instrumental heavy metal while they're writing, and it
Yeah.
keeps them focused. I get it. All right, man. Well, that's all I have. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know, like I said, I know you got a busy like week coming up. It's about a week to the draft now, so it's coming up quickly. But I wish you all the
Yeah.
best with that, and hopefully end up in New York. Maybe we'll see.
Yeah, man. I appreciate it going on. It's been fun. I appreciate the opportunity. I love doing interviews like this. And so hopefully I'd love to be up in New York as well, but whatever team has the best fit for me, I think I'll be fine. And I'm excited for the draft. It'll be a cool story at the end of the journey.
Absolutely, man. Well, I appreciate it, and best of luck with everything.
Yeah, thank you, man. Thanks for having me on.
Of course.